Welcome to the story of Saint Nick and the JonBenet Ramsey murder investigation. 2023. Case update.
Mr. Ramsey, be sure to listen very carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession.
Have you ever heard of the name Nick Wolfe before? And his name having anything to do with the JonBenet Ramsey case? Not Chris Wolfe, but Nick Wolfe. It's highly doubtful. His full name is Nicholas Leo Wolfe, born in Minnesota, on December 5, 1943. If alive, he would currently be 79 years old. Welcome, and prepare yourself for the story of Saint Nick and the JonBenet Ramsey murder investigation.
A lone wolf makes his own footprints. Don't you all find it strange that 26 years have gone by since her death, yet you have never even heard of Nick Wolfe before? It is now an established fact that he was a suspect early on in the Ramsey case, and Nick Wolfe was high up on the possible suspect lists left behind by Detective Lou Smit, R.I.P., and private investigator, Ollie Gray, R.I.P. If you know anything about the Ramsey case, that should tell you enough. In addition, Nick Wolfe's DNA has never been collected to verify or eliminate him as a suspect. Non-performance of duty and widespread corruption throughout the Boulder Police Department. It is a known fact that the entire Boulder Police Department and the Boulder County District Attorney's Office have been plagued and riddled with corruption and blatant police misconduct throughout the city and county for decades, including many officers being reprimanded for perjury, abuse of power, neglect of duty, racial profiling and police misconduct, which are all illegal behavior by officers
in their official capacity.
The cover-up. What BPD tried to sweep under the rug and hoped would go away forever, has come back to haunt them. Technology was moving a lot faster than the cover-up had planned on. It is painfully and sadly obvious that the Boulder Police Department does not want this case solved. The Idaho stabbing murder suspect was identified in 17 days using genetic genealogy. The Boulder Police Department has run out of excuses, and we are forcing them to play their cards. Solve it, or hand it over.
Disgraced Boulder police officer and commander, Thomas Trujillo, was in charge of the Ramsey case, and was recently reprimanded for misconduct, mainly for not doing any work on the Ramsey case as well as others, since 2019. His punishment: 3 days, no pay. Is this a joke to you all? Legally, that is non-performance of duty, under the Code of Conduct for Law Enforcement Officials in Colorado. You are all cowards, by every definition of the word. And that goes for everybody at the Boulder Police Department, and the Boulder County District Attorney's Office, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, as well as Governor Jared Polis, Mayor Aaron Brockett, DA Michael Doherty, and Chief of Police, Maris Herold.
Everyone has failed the Ramsey family. And if the Boulder Police Department honestly thinks everyone is gonna sit around and wait another 26 years for them to solve this case, then they must really think we're all dumb. Reminder: this was an unforgivable, intentional, brutal torture and killing of an innocent, young girl, and it remains unsolved to this day. You might have forgotten, but we haven't. JonBenet Ramsey and her family deserve better than this.
Nick Wolfe, and why his DNA must be collected. Number 1, Nick Wolfe was a possible suspect very early on in the case. Number 2, Nick was acting strange after the murder, according to a report from the nun at his church on the Abbey. Number 3, the nun stated that they gave Nick a pair of high-tech boots from the donation box. Number 4, Nick has never been tested or cleared using his DNA.
Number 5, according to family members, Nick was a known pedophile. Number 6, on a tape recording by police, the nun stated that when asked about JonBenet, she quoted Nick as saying, "That girl got what she deserved." Number 7, on December 26, 1996, the day after the murder, Nick took his Minnesota license plates off of his green Jeep and spray painted the Jeep primer in the Colorado winter. Number 8, Nick then put the Jeep inside of an enclosed car trailer and never drove it again and sold it a couple months later.
Number 9, Nick skipped town soon after the murder. Number 10. Nick is ex-military and served in the Air Force. Number 11. The beaver hairs recovered at the crime scene and on JonBenet's body can be sourced back to Nick. Number 12. Nick was born and raised into the St. Boniface Catholic Church and farming on the Abbey together as one.
Number 13. Nick graduated high school in 1961 from the St. Boniface High School. Number 14. Nick was in the typing club at the St. Boniface High School run by his teacher, Sister Cathell, SBTC. Number 15. In the 1940s, the United States Air Force adopted the motto Victory by Valor. Number 16. Detective Lou Smith and private investigator Ollie Gray both had Nick high up on their possible suspect lists they left behind.
Number 17. Nick has been completely off the grid and missing in action since 1997. Number 18. There has never been a missing persons report filed for Nick. Number 19. There is no death certificate on file for Nick. Number 20. Nick is openly gay and bisexual.
Number 21. It has been said that Nick lives in a small, Unabomber type of cabin in Minnesota, very close to the Canadian border. And number 22, Nick Wolf's very own daughter has expressed to authorities that she is positive that her father was responsible for the murder of JonBenet Ramsey.
The cast of characters. The fact that just about everyone involved in the case, family members, friends, acquaintances, ex-employees, and neighbors have all been cleared through DNA, must mean that it was someone the Ramseys did not know. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Stranger on stranger crime. Not sure where JonBenet caught Nick's eye, whether it be church, or a pageant, or parked on the Ramsey street, but she became Nick's fantasy, as well as his obsession.
Pack of wolves. Random fact. In the Ramsey case, there are many people with the last name Wolf, somehow connected to the case. However, none of them know each other, and none of them are related. There is a Christian Wolf, Nicholas Wolf, Michael Wolf, and a Denise Wolf. Cleared suspect. Christian Wolf actually sued the Ramseys for defamation of character for naming him in their book, The Death of Innocence. Court case. Wolf versus Ramsey.
Deciphering the ransom note. One thing nobody has ever done in the history of the Ramsey case is decipher the ransom note. So, not only must the DNA match the UM1, foreign DNA collected at the crime scene, but the suspect and the ransom note must be connected as well. Not just some of the note, but the entire thing. Not speculation on how and why, and no handwriting experts, but the actual substance of the ransom note and why it was written. Not only did Nick know she was dead when he left her in the wine cellar in the basement, but he still neatly placed the ransom note on the spiral staircase as he left. He knew he was going to leave her there from the very start, because he most likely didn't have a place to take her, and why would he take her, when he already got what he wanted? And exactly what he came for.
SBTC. Nick Wolf was born into the St. Boniface Catholic Church, SBCC, and went to high school at St. Boniface High School, SBHS, and was also in the St. Boniface Typing Club, SBTC. His entire life, including all of his family members, were raised around the St. Boniface Catholic Church and the SB letters, all linked back to Minnesota. The staging of the Ramsey home was all done on purpose. Nick did not plan on taking her out of the house, and he never intended to call and get the ransom money. It was a complete diversion of his sick perversion. He obviously had plenty of time alone in the house that evening waiting for the Ramseys to get home. The lengthy ransom note didn't seem rushed at all when it was written, quite the opposite.
The ransom note. When dealing with ransom notes in a kidnap for ransom, it's been said that the author will portray themselves the opposite of who they really are. Nick's entire life has been encompassed around the church, yet there is not one thing religious or spiritual written in the note. He is disassociating himself from who is doing this, and he is cleverly placing the blame elsewhere, perhaps even towards John and the family. Not one cuss word was used in the entire note. He cannot disassociate himself from every aspect of himself, so using cuss words isn't in his comfort zone. Despite the substance of the note, it was actually written in a polite, feminine quality type of tone. Although the ransom note is filled with many heinous things, it was not written in a mean tone. For the most part, besides the military overtones throughout, the rest of the note can be attributed to many different ransom and vigilante-type action movies from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s.
It was never a kidnap for ransom, because if it was a real kidnap for ransom, and he was already able to grab her out of her bed and get her downstairs without waking anyone up, then why even continue to the basement? He could have gone out of any door he wanted. The motive was completely sexual in nature. Nick acting out on his sick fantasy and knowing he was going to kill her. And he was gonna do everything in his power to not get caught. However, if JonBenet was dead before the killer left, and after using gloves, and leaving no fingerprints, and wiping the body down, why would he leave so much evidence behind, such as a lengthy ransom note? It's by far the biggest clue in the case. Nick didn't have to leave the note, and if he already did, he could have grabbed the note as he was leaving, but he didn't. Instead, he placed it neatly on the spiral staircase. That diversion obviously had to be done, in order to buy some time and for the ruse to work. All of the calamity surrounding the ransom note and the entire case was to cover up why it even happened. Self-gratification, nothing more, nothing less. And so far, the ruse has worked for over 26 years. Although the ransom note was extremely clever, it was not articulate. There were a couple of misspellings, speaking in first and third person, as well as a couple of run-off sentences. He knew who the Ramseys were, but did not personally know the Ramseys. Most of the personal information found on the note, connected to John, could have easily been found snooping around the house and going through John's records. And he might have known her name was JonBenet, but probably didn't know how to spell it.
Some say the ransom note was vengeful, or somebody holding a grudge, or perhaps even an ex-employee, but that was all part of the plan. How many ways can you point your finger in a different direction was by design and the overall theme of the note. The most brilliant thing he ever did with a ransom note was make it personal, even though him and the Ramseys didn't even know each other. And personal enough to blame John for what happened by not following the rules, and that the killer was only doing his job. The killer already knew John wouldn't be able to follow all the countless, detailed instructions on the note. In reality, nothing was John's fault at all. Him and his family woke up to a nightmare that forever changed their lives and countless people around the world.
Whenever Nick decided on a signature for the ransom note, it was simple. S.B. something. Being that St. Boniface was his upbringing in Minnesota, so nobody would make the connection all the way in Colorado. Perhaps he underestimated how big the case would become. Big enough that someone finally connected the dots 26 years later.
There must have been a triggering event. It's textbook. JonBenet's killer likely had a similar event prior to the murder. Maybe a divorce, or a termination, or a breakup, or even family trouble. Something made him finally act out on his fantasy.
While writing this fantasy out on paper, and in his mind, he seemed to have fun with it. He wrote it before the murder, and the one and only thing on his mind was sexually deviant in nature. It's the only reason he broke into the Ramsey home. It's the only reason he patiently waited for the parents to fall asleep. It's the only reason he abducted her out of her bed. It's the only reason there was a girl found murdered in her own house. And it's the only reason he left the ransom note. A diversion for his sick, demented perversion.
Sadly, all of this wasn't about money. It wasn't a friend or an enemy. It wasn't about revenge or jealousy. And it wasn't a disgruntled ex-employee or a pedophile older brother, or a mom that got mad, or a little brother throwing a fit with a maglite. It was a sick and very twisted grown man that acted out on his pedophilic impulses. It's pretty sad to think that an innocent 6-year-old girl was tortured and strangled, sodomized and murdered, and with all of the calamity that followed, for an urge and 15 seconds of self-pleasure. Sociopathic psychopath, narcissistic pedophile.
The St. Boniface Catholic Church and the Wolf family. We seem to notice that no matter what the cause would be, whether it be a marriage, a funeral, a news article, a family reunion, a graduation, or an obituary, everything surrounding the Wolf family is connected strongly to the St. Boniface Catholic Church of Minnesota. from the early 1900s to the present time. We have all heard about the countless child sex abuse scandals that have plagued the Catholic Church for decades, including in the Boy Scouts of America. St. Boniface Catholic Church in Minnesota is no exception. Child sexual abuse was often swept under the rug. Nick was a Boy Scout as well as an altar boy.
If you noticed, a lot of things were never even mentioned in these findings, being that they weren't necessarily needed while trying to solve the case. Please note, they are all still very important, but a lot of them become more of a distraction from analyzing the most important evidence and facts in the case. The unmentioned. The bowl of pineapple, the beauty pageants, the stun gun, the secret Santa, the point of entry, the flashlight, the duct tape, the grand jury, the 911 call, Access graphics, or John's bonus check, the paintbrush, Burke's Swiss Army knife, footprints in the snow, contents of JonBenet's stomach, the basement window, the blue suitcase, the bedwetting, the wine cellar, the garrote, the Barbie dolls, or even handwriting experts. And most importantly, it was solved without having to use the UM1, foreign male DNA that was collected from the crime scene and entered into CODIS. Just good old detective and teamwork and some late-night sleuthing, that's all. The UM1 will match Nick Wolf.
The ransom note was never the real plan. The author painted himself as someone that's strong-arming John for money, and maybe because of something to do with his personal business dealings, and his daughter can be returned to John safe and sound if he follows the rules, and that the kidnapper is only doing his job. Meet his demands and wait for the imaginary phone call tomorrow morning. Modus operandi, the killer's MO. He did his dirty work at night, and if there is one thing he is an expert at, it's patience. He is stealthy and extremely patient. He was also in a meth-induced psychosis. He was already a sicko, and that was only amplified. This was the first and only time he used a ransom note in his crimes. He looks harmless, maybe even looks like a decent guy. He has left his DNA at other crime scenes that haven't matched anyone as of yet.
Here is a message to the entire Boulder Police Department of Colorado. Transparency is now the way of the world. Get with the times. No matter what the truth is, put it all out on the table and see where it goes from there. Covering up for each other will not work any longer. You are all spineless, and you all lack integrity. Accountability is now crucial in a department full of widespread corruption. Break the silence, or we will find someone who will. We are not going away.
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 Fuck the BPD.
And to everybody else, all we ask is that you please share this video. JonBenet is counting on us. We are all she has left. Feel free to contact us with any information. Our email is john.benet.ramsey.tips@gmail.com. The story of Saint Nick and the JonBenet Ramsey murder investigation was written by Team GAC, who is part of the CriminalNetwork, a subsidiary of Lowtown Records. And in closing, a really big fuck you to the BPD and DA, Michael Dougherty.
Colorado Governor Jared Polis, this unsolved murder has left one big stain on Colorado. You, my friend, have the power to properly clean it up by simply doing the right thing. You said, the killer of JonBenet Ramsey should not rest easy, yet even after 26 years, he is still resting easy and living his best life. Do it for that little Boulder girl and her family. Make it happen, Governor.
And finally, justice for JonBenet Ramsey.
Fuck you. The way I see it, the Boulder Police Department can eat a big fat, scrumptious, gorilla dick.
Police